Be excellent to each other and party on, dudes. I'm back with another legacy video. This time, we're talking about Nadu, Winged Wisdom, a brand new card from Modern Horizons 3 that is not yet out as time of publication of this video, but I've been playtesting it a whole lot in my favorite open source software for testing Magic the Gathering, Cockatrice. So I have my replays in here, and we're going to go through 10 matches that I did here to showcase how powerful this card is. I'm going to go ahead and show you what the card is. It looks like this, and it says creature you control. So just to talk about the mana casting cost, it's 1 colorless, 1 green, 1 blue. Flying legendary bird wizard, 3/4, which great stats just for the creature. So 3 mana flyer that's a 3/4. And creatures you control have, whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, put it into your hand. This ability triggers only twice each turn. Only twice. So pushed. I mean, I looked at a lot of spoilers from Modern Horizons 3. This card immediately jumped out at me as probably the most pushed Ragavan-like card in Modern Horizons 3. And of course, I don't know if this ability can really be exploited that conveniently in Modern, but in Legacy, we have a deck called Cephalid Breakfast, and we have a card called Cephalid Illusionist that can mill your entire deck whenever you target it. And we also have this really crappy equipment, arguably the worst equipment ever printed, Shuko, that just gives your creature +1/+0, but guess what the equip cost is? 0. Which and it's a 1-drop, which means you can get it with Urza's Saga. So you go get your Shuko, and then you infinitely target either Cephalid Illusionist to mill your entire deck, or Nadu, Winged Wisdom, to essentially draw your entire deck over the course of several turns. You can't do it immediately because of this ability triggers only twice each turn. Keep in mind, you're not just drawing these cards, you're actually flipping them over, and if they're a land, you're putting them into play. If they're a card, you're putting them into your hand. So this dodges Narset, this dodges Bowmasters, the boogeyman of the format. So what I've done here is I've essentially taken a really solid like tier 2, tier 3 deck, Cephalid Breakfast, and I've which, by the way, the current trophy leader, he might be the current trophy leader, Larson, on MTGO. I've played against him on some of my MTGO leagues. He is incredibly good at playing Cephalid Breakfast, and I've been brewing with him and looking at his sideboard guide, and I've not only created this list that goes ahead and it can play 4 plows, it can play 4 forces, it can play the Brainstorm and the Ponder, sift through your deck, and yes, it has a few kind of janky cards like Narcomoebas, like a Thassa's Oracle, like this common 1/1 creature that really has no business being played in a format like Legacy, but just happens to have instant speed, 0 cost activation ability to target a creature, right? Which, as we know, can really be powerful with Cephalid Illusionist and Nadu Winged Wisdom. So, yes, it's playing some bad cards, but it's also a very respectable control shell here with cards like Teferi to essentially lock your opponent out of being able to do things, some prismatic endings, and a very janky Dread Return, which we can Cabal Therapy out of our hand if it gets stuck in our hand. We can't actually cast it. We can cast the Cabal Therapy on the front side. We do have 1 black source. So let's talk about the mana base of this deck real quick. So we have 1 Underground Sea, and that's just to cast the Cabal Therapy. That's also to make our prismatic endings potentially able to hit 4-drops. 1 4-drop that is very problematic for us if we're trying to win through our A plan of milling our graveyard and then Dread Returning, sacrificing the Narcomoebas to bring Thassa's Oracle back into play when we have an empty deck and just instantly winning regardless of what the opponent's got going on. That's a pretty good ability, right? But one of the cards that we're playing to enable that is, of course, Dread Return. So we may have to therapy this out of our hand if it gets stuck in our hand. But the other cards, I mean, this is a 4-color deck, and we are actually playing some basics. We're playing a basic island and a basic plains, and we're playing a bunch of fetches 8 fetches, and we're playing 2 of the Surveillance. These are extremely good in this deck because you surveil a Narcomoeba into your graveyard. Boom, you've got a 1/1 creature in play that can potentially be targeted with one of those 0 activation abilities and flip a bunch of cards with Nadu. And you'll see this come up over and over again. We're going to go through 10 matches that I played one by one, and you'll see just how insane this card is. I'm not exaggerating when I say there are games where he basically draws 30 cards. He draws half my deck, and he can probably keep drawing cards, but I run out of cards, right? Over the course of like 2 or 3 turns, because this says this ability triggers only twice each turn. So you can, if you have 3 creatures out, you can essentially 0 activating cost, target all 3 of them twice, flip 6 cards, and then you go to your opponent's card and you can do it again. What other way can you see 12 cards in a turn? Turn cycle, right? Your turn, your opponent's turn, right? So we're going to see this over and over again. Just the sheer raw brokenness of Nadu. And I will not be surprised at all if this deck becomes like a tier 1 deck and if Nadu gets banned, because it's just that powerful. So just to finish talking about the mana base, we've got 2 tropical islands. We've got 1 tundra. I would normally have 2 tundras here, but I do have a basic plains. I just want to make sure I have at least 3 white sources and 3 green sources, because it is quite common for a savvy opponent to waste you out. So again, I apologize for this long deck tech. I'm excited to get to the matches. The other thing to note is this is an Urza Saga deck, and you do have the backup plan of just winning through constructs, which are not nearly as big as an 8-cast. They can get as big as like 7 5s. Essentially, which is pretty big, because again, Shuko, not only does it count as an equipment, but you can attach it to one of your you can equip it to one of your constructs and beat down that way. So my personal experience with Cephalid Breakfast, I played it a lot before Bowmasters was printed. Bowmasters did punch a hole in the deck because you're relying on these X1s to win the game, and Bowmasters just cleanly takes care of these. So I played quite a bit. I won a 1K. I came in first place at like a 35-person tournament last year, playing an older version of Cephalid Breakfast that played Stoneforge Mystic as another way to get Shuko and also to get a Kaldor Complete if you wanted to take that backup plan. So we're going to go ahead and jump into these matches, and I'll just show you how powerful it is. Also, I want to point out that I've already produced a sideboard guide that has my full list. I tweeted it. If you go to twitter.com/beexcellent80s, 1980s, like 80s. That's my Twitter handle there, and I created that account just so I could interact with like some of the legacy creators in the space and share these brews. So it'll walk you through the sideboard, which is very standard fare. I mean, the fact that we have access to 4 colors, of course, we're going to be playing these amazing cards. So without further ado, let's jump into the matches. Again, I want to note that we're playing this in Cockatrice, which is different from MTGO. This is an open source client. It does not have the rules hard coded. You actually have to, it's just like playing in paper basically. So we're going to go in here and we're going to just start our first match against our first opponent. Another thing to note is that unlike MTGO, you can use whatever username you want. There's no restrictions. So pardon the mild profanity in my opponent's name. So what I'm going to do here is, you can see they've joined, and I'm just going to kind of speed it up. And so we start by rolling the old-fashioned way, and let's take a look at the hand. Again, I apologize the cards are so small. That's just how this client looks, especially when you're replaying. There's just not that much real estate. So let's take a look at the opening hand. So we can see my opponent's hand during the replay, which is great because we have like more perfect information than we normally have. So you can note that they're on some sort of land strategy here with One Ring. This is an okay hand. It's not a spectacular hand. It doesn't have our A and B. So the way these A-B combos work, like Show and Tell, Emrakul, or of course in our case, Shuko and Cephalid Illusionist, right? The way these A-B combos work is you have to have 2 cards to go off. So we don't have either of those. Let's see whether we keep this. But I mean, this is a solid all-around hand. So I'm just gonna slow it down a little bit. So let's take a look. They played a Misty, and here we have gone ahead and played out. We're gonna crack our Flooded Strand here. We're gonna go get a Meticulous Archive. So we did not surveil anything into our graveyard. We liked our top card, which unfortunately the user interface doesn't show what that was. Oh wait, yeah, we were able to hedge maze a Narcomoeba into play. Again, very cool interaction with these, but Narcomoeba just puts it puts the card in your graveyard and Narcomoeba comes back. So we've already got a 1/1 creature. Another thing to note here is my opponent is playing Urza's Tower, which may seem totally random, but there's this card like Planar or something. I can't remember what it's called, but it basically makes this into a Mishra's Workshop, essentially. Like if you have those two cards, this just taps for 3 mana. It's really strong. And I'd never seen this combo before, but I don't know if it's as good as like. But one thing to note is, unlike the Cloud Post, this doesn't come into play tap, so you can just immediately tap it for tons of mana if you have this land out. So here we go. My opponent is going ahead and they're playing out a Thespian Stage, which kind of threatens a lot here. They could have Dark Depths. They could potentially copy Urza's Saga. There's a lot of shenanigans you can get up to with Thespian Stage in a lands deck. So my hand at this point, I now have Nomads, Encore. I have Nadu. This is the combo. Basically, if I resolve this, I'm going to be able to draw a ton of cards. And then I've got, this is pretty much a dead card. Teferi's kind of a dead card because they're not going to have counter magic. And you also know my opponent created this card because you have to pass priority and stuff. Sometimes people, instead of like wanting to type in the chat that they're passing priority, they just create like a card and like tap it. So I attack for 1. My opponent casts the 1 ring. I can't do anything about this. So they have protection. And I'm going to go fetch, and I'm going to go for it. I'm going to play with the Nomads, and I'm going to play Nadu. Okay, so at this point, because we're manually enforcing the rules. Okay, this is the card I was talking about, by the way, Planar Nexus. This is the card that pairs with Urza's Tower to essentially, Urza's Tower, if you control an Urza's Mine and an Urza's Power Plant, you can tap it for 3. Well, guess what? This means you control everything. Every non-basic land type, you control it. So immediately this taps for 3 mana. Okay. So once he gets this into play, he'll have access to 1 mana, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 immediately, right? And then if he plays out this one, the subsequent turn, then he'll have like 10 mana, right? So it scales really fast. Okay, so I've got the combo. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to start flipping. So I basically just drag things. So the way I'm doing it is I'm just putting a counter on it to represent the fact that I've used it once, because again, you can only trigger twice per creature that you control. So my opponent understands, and boom, look at that. So I just flipped 6 cards. It's happening very fast because this is sped up. But basically, I got a full grip. Like right now, what I could do is I could go ahead and flood a strand, go get a land, and then I could play out Cephalid Illusionist, and I could basically just win. Now, I don't know what my opponent has. There's not really any harm in just passing the turn and doing this again next turn and getting 6 more cards. So I think that's what I do. I could play another Nomads, though, and I think that's what I do. So I play out Nomads, and then I can just do it twice again. This is how broken. So already I've seen 8 cards. 8 cards off this combo. Okay. Now we're going to go to their turn. They're going to draw 2 cards off their... 2 cards off 1 ring. Like, 1 ring is normally very scary, but I can just draw another 8 cards. Watch. So I like go ahead and let them do stuff, and I'll just respond on the stack. And they are, let's see, they're using this new card. Okay, so Sowing Mycospawn. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger here because I think this is about the maximum size. So Devoid, the card has no color. So it's 3 green, and this is another Modern Horizons 3 card. 3 colorless and a green. Kicker, 1 and a colorless, like whatever this is, the waste mana. So if you have 6 mana, you can play the Kicker. And so when you cast this spell, it's not an ETB. It's like it's a cast trigger. This is the new brokenness that we saw with like the Ulamog. I think of the Infinite Gyre. He's the really powerful one that exiles 2 permanents immediately when you cast him. It can't be interacted with other than with Stifle. So when you cast this spell, search your library for a land card and put it onto the battlefield. Not tapped, just put it onto the battlefield. That's pretty damn good, right? And then when you cast this spell, if it was kicked, exile target land. So they're exiling my Underground Sea. Okay, so normally this would be pretty powerful, but like frankly, I'm about to draw 8 cards, right? Not just draw 8 cards, but potentially put a whole bunch of stuff into play. So they're using the Yavimaya green mana off of Tabernacle. Tabernacle's good here. I mean, it does tie up my mana. And what I'm doing here is Wait, why did I play this? Oh, I'm flipping. I'm flipping cards. So I get to flip 8 more cards. Okay, so I found a Caracas, among other things, so I can bounce my Nadu if they threaten it. And this is my hand. Again, it's like really small, but you can see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I've got 14 cards in my hand. I've got 2 mana up. I've got the ability to force 2 things. I've got the ability to plow 2 things. I'm not losing this game. And my opponent is starting to realize just how raw, powerful Nadu is. So we go ahead and go to game 2. So game 2. So let's take a look at the openers here. Okay, so this is the combo. I mean, you don't throw these back. So when you're playing, I've got 2 lands, I've got a Nomad, Encore, and I've got a Cephalid Illusionist, and I also have a Shuko. So if I want, I can test the waters by putting a Shuko out there. Yeah, we'll see. This is kind of actually an exciting game, if I recall. So they play a Pithing Needle, and they name Nomads because Nomads is the card. Like, Nomads is so much better than Shuko because with Nadu, you can do the ability on their turn as well. You can only equip as a sorcery with Shuko, so Shuko is not as strong. So they correctly name Nomads, which is a vastly more powerful card in this matchup. We play 4 Nomads, we only play 2 Shuko, right? But luckily I have this prismatic ending in hand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to end the game quickly. So I go ahead and play out Shuko, and the next turn I can potentially Flooded Strand. Now I don't have a force, so I probably wouldn't try to do this because, look, they have crop rotation. I don't know that they have crop rotation, but they often have crop rotation in lands decks, and you want to play around this. Now, is this a lands deck? This is actually more kind of like, you know, there's like a whole spectrum of lands that goes from like kind of ramp decks, like 12 post, and then there's, you know, depths, and then there's turbo depths. Like, but when I say lands, I'm really just talking like some sort of strategy that involves putting a bunch of powerful lands into play and winning without having to really put spells on the stack for the most part. So let's go ahead and see what they do here. Collector Oof. Oof. Collector Oof, as they call it, right? So now I can't activate my Shuko. Again, I've got Prismatic Ending. I'm not in a rush. They've got like no pressure at this point. They are gradually getting their cards in play that they need to win, though. So what I'm going to do is I think I just Prismatic End the Collector Oof to unlock my Shuko. So I fetch, and I fetch a Savannah. At this point, I was playing a Savannah. I think after this match, I took out Savannah and just replaced it with Islands because I noticed that my blue count, I don't like to have fewer than like 14 or 15 initial blue sources in my blue cantrip decks just because you really do want to see them, and I wanted to have like a 92% or higher chance that I would have blue cards in my openers. So I think this is the only appearance you'll see of Savannah in these 10 matches. So they play a Cloud Post, and they don't really have anything going on, so I can just combo. So I'm going to go ahead and play Cephalid Illusionist out. Now keep in mind they do have crop rotation, so I can equip once here, and they're tapping their OK card to pass priority. So I can mill some cards, and at this point I kind of like think about it, and I'm like, actually I probably shouldn't even do this. Because if they do have crop rotation, they can get Bajuka Bog at instant speed, and I'm screwed. So I just need to wait until I have a counter spell before I can. And so I think for a while, and then I do let the trigger resolve a couple times. And frankly, I let it resolve a lot more than it should. Okay, so here I play out the Nomads, and I just sack it for Cabal Therapy. I'm going to Flashback Therapy, naming crop rotation. I think is what I name here. I name Fairy Macabre because crop rotation you can force. Fairy Macabre, literally, if it's in their hand, that's the game. There's nothing you can do. You can't win the standard way because Fairy Macabre is an activated ability and you can't stop it, and it just instant speed removes, you know, your and at this point, if we take a look at my graveyard, I don't yet have key cards that would be vulnerable to Fairy Macabre, so that's why I named it. Unfortunately, I'm not going to get another shot at this. I just have to wait until I can get crop rotation out of their hand. So I could have named crop rotation. That was a higher likelihood, but Fairy Macabre is the real blowout here. So the game is going to go on. I'm not going to attempt to go any further. Now I know what's in their hand. And another little subtle thing, I probably should have equipped Narco just so I could, you know, block. I'm not going to be blocking with Cephalid Illusionist because that's my meal ticket. Okay. One Ring comes into play. We're not that scared of it. I mean, we have the combo. So I'm going to Brainstorm here, and I find the force, so now I can just go off. So I also have Nadu, and I could just play Nadu and draw a ton of cards as well, which actually is more conservative, but it's not really necessary. Um, they've seen 2 cards since I played it out. They don't have mana open for a second Crop Rot. If they do, yeah, I think it's totally fine to just go for it here. But I think I play out Nadu. I mean, it's a new card, and now I'm gonna draw 6 cards. Now, first to note that like when I equip here, it does activate that. Okay. And my opponent says stop at this point, and they want to crop rotate, and I force. Now, note that I can only Shuko at sorcery speed. So that's what's happening. I'm going through and activating 2 on each creature. So I'm only going to get 8 cards this turn, not 16, because I won't be able to do this during my opponents. But wait, actually I can do it during my opponents. So yeah, I'll just like look at that. I just drew like 10 cards, right? And some of them came into play directly. My Urza Saga, my Caracas, those came into play directly. And they're not even tapped. This card is cracked as hell. Okay, so now I just equip my Shuko. I think I attack for some damage. It doesn't really... Oh, wait, I can't even attack. I did actually attack because I forgot that they had the trigger that gives them protection from everything. So here, like... I mean, there's nothing to be done, really, unless they can somehow win immediately. Like, I'm just going to run away with the game. They can potentially bounce my Nadu. So I'll just get another 10 cards, please. So at this point, like... I brainstorm and stuff, but what I could do is just basically draw my entire deck, and then just eventually I will be able to cast the Thassa's Oracle, and that's how I'll close out the game. But you can just see like how overpowered. Like I have such an abundance. It's almost kind of embarrassing when you get this many cards in your hand because you're sure you're making like suboptimal plays. But yeah, I just returned Thassa's Oracle. I mean, I've got like so much counter magic and everything, so that's the game. And my opponent decides to play me again afterward. So they're switching to a different deck. And a thing to note about this is like a lot of people will say like, oh, Cockatrice has like really low skill players and stuff. It's not the same as MTGO. Now, the average player on Cockatrice is not anywhere near the caliber of somebody you're going to find in like a legacy challenge, right? I'm definitely going to concede that. But I only play with like a certain set of people that are pretty good. Like generally, I don't play against bad players. Like I think there are like maybe 1 or 2 matches in this entire series which are with people that you might encounter like during the first or second round of a legacy league that like are just relatively new to the format and making like misplays or have like a weird brew that's like really suboptimal. But in general, Cockatrice players, like a lot of these people I've talked to them, you know, for months and months and played them many, many times. And they generally are strong players. So this time they are like, okay, if that deck just, you know, completely destroyed lands, maybe I should play the boogeyman of the format, right? And so that's what they're going to do here. They switch to Rescam. Now, I don't know that they're on Rescam. They just reloaded with a different deck, and they know I'm coming back in with the same deck. So there's already an information asymmetry in that they know what I'm playing, and I don't know what they're on. So I keep, and I'm just going to ponder. I don't know what I'm looking for, but like the great thing about this deck is like they say you shouldn't ponder if you don't know what you're looking for, but I do kind of know what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a Nomad's Encore or a Shuko to pair with this. Like that's the great thing about combo decks that have cantrips is you can go ahead and proactively cantrip because you do kind of know what you're looking for. I'm not a control deck. I'm not purely trying to react. I just have a lot of control elements, and I can kind of do my best control deck impression here. So they're going to surveil. They like what's on top. So here they're going to grief me. My bet is that they take Cephalid Illusionist because that's the scary card where I could draw a card and just win. They know I have Force. They don't know that I'm going to play Disciplined around the days. They can assume that I'm going to play Disciplined around days unless they have just a ton of pressure. So yeah, and I can see why they kept the Entomb. They wanted the black card to exile for grief, and now they can just go and Entomb their win condition. But they may just take Force and then plan to reanimate and attract. So that's a perfectly respectable plan. Let's see what they do here. They think, and they take Brainstorm, interestingly, which they know I'm probably not going to want to pitch my Illusionist. But the reality is, like, if Atrax is on this deck, I will pitch Illusionist. But I probably won't do that into potential days. So they're brainstorming themselves. They've got another Grief. Okay, so they put back a Wasteland, and they put back a Daze. So interesting that they dropped the Daze, but I guess they have Force anyway. And they're going to go ahead and just ponder. And, yeah, so their hand actually doesn't have that many cards in it. If you think about it, it's got Entomb, Grief, and that's because they went negative a card to Grief me. And Grief, of course, is in their graveyard now, waiting to be eventually reanimated. I think they're... Okay, interesting. So they just went ahead and Grief me again. They're going very low resource here. They pitched both Entombs. So I'm not sure what their plan is. Like, I genuinely don't think that that's like the way I would have played that. Now, but if you look at my hand, it's crap. It's basically just a bunch of lands and reactive cards that aren't really going to do much. So, you know, maybe it's not the worst. And they do rip a Reanimate, which is precisely what they needed. So, I always just let these resolve. I don't try to take out a Grief. It's a 7-turn clock. Probably 6-turn, realistically, if I'm fetching and forcing. But there's not a lot I need to worry about right now, so I'm just going to let it continue. So, Meticulous Archive, I go ahead and dump a... let me see. Do I dump a card into my graveyard with Meticulous Archive? So I put... I saw Nadu, and I just put him back, right back on top. Because Nadu is going to draw me out of this eventually. So I do draw Nadu, and I play out a land. And I'm just basically hoping to the heavens that I don't need to force and pitch Nadu, because Nadu is my path to victory here. Okay, so they start forcing me, which I'm totally fine with. I've got tons of land. Again, their hand is purely reactive. Whoa! Look at this. Nomads Encore. Nadu. BFF. Best friends forever, right? So, okay, now they have Orcish Bowmasters, which is problematic. Orcish Bowmasters can ping my Nomads. So the question is, do I play it out? First of all, I can't play Nomads. I don't have white. I think did they waste me off white? They wasted me off white, which is clever. Like, you should always waste people off white. In general, like if you're playing like a creature based, because I can't plow even if I rip it. So I'm going to be able to play out a land, but I'm not going to actually be able to do much with it. So I think playing out Nadu here is kind of a silly play. Like, I mean, I'm essentially him them, but oh, I see why I drew Cephalid Illusionist. Now it makes sense that I did that. Okay, and here's where they make an amateur mistake, in my opinion. Like, they definitely don't need to play this out. They've got a clock. I've got nothing on board. They can just attack me for 3 every turn. They proactively play out Orcish Bowmaster, even knowing at this point, have they seen any? Well, yeah, they saw my Cephalid, so they know that I'm playing Breakfast. If you're up against Breakfast, always hold Orcish Bowmasters. Don't try to be proactive with it. So again, I don't mean to be too critical of my opponent's play, but I do think that that was a mistake, and it's a mistake that's going to cost them the game, because now I can just play Nomads, play Cephalid, and I can go off with impunity because they have 1 card in hand, and they're not going to have Surgical game 1. Okay, so we go to game 2. Again, even if my opponent is not a super seasoned player of this deck of Reanimator, it is, in my humble opinion, the strongest deck in the format, hands down. And your deck needs to be able to beat this deck. So this deck, like, it's not as high skill as playing, you know, Delver, in my opinion, or a lot of other decks. Like you can play pretty poorly and just get bailed out by Reanimation on Atraxa or a Grief Scam, right? Which you'll have approximately 17-18% of the time, you know, in your first 8 cards. Okay, so this hand is not great. In fact, there's no way I keep this because there's no path to a second land. So I'm going to mull. And the general thinking is you never mull against Scam. But I don't really have a choice. And this hand, it's pretty weak. I think I may mull this too. Because if you think about it, it doesn't do anything for several turns. It doesn't have any interaction. Double Nomad. I mean, like, turn 3, yay, we can go off, if assuming they don't have Days, assuming they don't have Wasteland. So I think this is something we put back. And I do put it back. And this is a much better hand. But again, it only has 1 land. So what we're probably going to do is put back a Nomad. So this does have the combo. I think we probably have to put back Plow and a Nomads. Yep, and that's what I did. Okay, so we have the combo, but unfortunately our hand is about to get shredded. So it doesn't really matter that we have the combo now we have nothing, basically. Okay, so they took the Nomads because they know that Nomads can pair with... I'm actually surprised they took Nomads instead of Cephalid, I think. But maybe they're like, oh, he can't cast that. And, they don't know we drew a land because I just played out the land that we had. So this is great because now I can fetch a basic, but it's probably too late anyway. They're beating me down, and they're reanimating a second Grief. I could have definitely forced this. In retrospect, I probably should have forced this because now we're looking at us being down a whole lot. Like our 5-turn clock just turned into like a 3-turn clock. So we're gonna not be able to draw as many cards. And I don't think this force does anything for the rest of the game, unfortunately, because of this. And now they have the ability to potentially, their hand's just so juicy. Look at that. They got Talthy. They've got Brazen Borrower for whatever throw we play out. We're not winning this game. And I meant to kill this archive, but Narcomoeba is not a good Magic card on its own. It's only good in the context of coming into play for free. All right, let's go in here. All right, so let's take a look at their hand first. This is a Snapkeep, Entomb, Reanimate hand. It also has Fatal Push, which deals with my combo creatures. Like, it can kill anything in my deck. And they've got cantrips. This is basically the dream hand, in my opinion. The only thing that would be better is if they had like a Grief in here so that they could potentially Grief first to double check and then reanimate the Grief if they really need to stop something. My hand is terrible. Can't keep it. This is one of the reasons I took the Savannah out. And I said that I was taking it out, but I guess I didn't take it out until the third match. But Savannah is just like, if this were a blue source, I would have Island Brainstorm, and I could potentially use that. Not that I would keep that anyway, but yeah, you don't want to neglect having blue stuff. So I put an Narcomoeba on the bottom. One of the great things about this deck is there's so much stuff that's better in your deck that you just don't want in your hand, like Dread Return, like these Narcomoebas. I actually had 2 Narcomoebas in this hand. I can only put 1 back. So this presents a turn 2 win if unmolested. Now, they have Fatal Push. They probably have all sorts of other interactions that I don't know about. So I wouldn't go for a turn 2 in this situation. But maybe I do. If they tap out, then yeah. And the thing is, okay, so I've got Surgical Extraction. I've got Insulation from their combo now. Doesn't make sense to go for it. I may just attack here. I think really hard, and then I just decide to attack. I Brainstorm here because I can safely Brainstorm around Bowmasters. I've got my 3rd land. So this allows me to go for it with Daze Protection up. And I don't have Force Protection, but one of the things about playing a combo deck, is it took me so long to get used to this as a control player, is sometimes you just got to jam. And so they're going to Entomb Atraxa. They're going to attempt to Reanimate. I've got the Clutch Surgical. This is why you play Surgical. It's 0 mana interaction. Even if they have Daze, they can't stop it. And unfortunately, their God Hand just got dismantled by a single 0 mana instant. And now they've still got a very strong hand, but I'm going to win, so it doesn't matter. Boom. Game over. All right, so I've just won twice. You're going to see a lot of winning in this series of games. And next, I'm up against Waity Kane. So let's dive into this game. And I go ahead and play 2 leagues with them. Actually, if you check my sideboard guide, I have my match record, and I have detailed notes of all the different games I've played. So I play 2 matches against this Yorion Beans deck. So spoiler alert, if you don't want to know the spoiler alert, don't look over at these numbers. Just look over here, and you can see who I'm matched up against. Again, some really strong legacy players on and a few players I hadn't played before on Cockatrice. So let's jump back over here and let's get this going. So we always start with the usual pleasantries. They rolled a 1, I rolled a 4. I'm going to keep this even though it's got Dread Return. Wait, yeah, because I can Island, then I can shuffle it back. So sometimes you do keep Dread Return. The reason I'm going to keep this, again, Cephalid Illusionist and Nomad's Encore. You want these 2 cards, PB and J. That's a peanut butter and jelly for anybody who hasn't heard that expression. It's the ultimate like sandwich combination. Okay, so these I was so skeptical of these surveil lands, and I don't think they're great. And like, for example, Beanstalk, I play one of them, and I'm not even sure if one is correct. It seems like it's good. Sometimes I do get punished by it, but in a combo deck, these cards are ridiculously good because it's like free half ponder every turn if you don't need the mana. So I'm able to, Meticulous Archive, and I'm gonna go ahead and put the Dread Return on top. Unfortunately, I don't have a way to shuffle it away, so I'm going to draw it again, which sucks. We do have the Cabal Therapy to get it out of our hand if we absolutely need to. Okay, so I play Urza Saga. It's my second land here. They're going to ponder. They're going to play a forest. Okay, let's take a look at their hand. So at this point, like, I am definitely getting Beanstalk vibes, especially because they have a Yorion. And Yorion decks that, like, if they're not playing planes, you can assume that it's some sort of 4-color control. It could be Espervile, but usually it's like 4-color control that plays Yorion. So at this point, like, I basically, I'm gonna make him. I think I make him have it here. I could hang back forever with these Urza Saga tokens, and that's like a totally legit strategy. Just create a bunch of tokens, but it doesn't hurt. To test, it's an 80 card deck. If they're playing 4 Force of Wills, then there's a good chance. And they say, I'm cold to it, I have no response, and they just scoop. Game 2. So we can look at this sideboard. Let's take a look, see if I can view my sideboard. Is there a way to view sideboard in this? View sideboard. I'm not actually sure if there is a way. Be excellent. Okay, so in the replay mode of this, I don't believe you can view sideboards. Let me just try my hotkey here. Doesn't work. Okay, so I can't actually tell you what I've sideboarded. Again, next week, when you're watching this, I'm going to have, I'll be playing with Nadu, and I will have MTGO. And of course, that has like the ability to replay with sideboard and everything. So again, my gratitude for you bearing with me with the Cockatrice interface. Cockatrice is amazing, free open source software. I'm going to create a guide to installing it and playing with it, and configuring the hotkeys and doing all that stuff. I will create that guide, but like, it's not, the user interface is not designed for flashy, interesting, like, nobody was going to be playing this on TikTok. Let's put it that way. Okay, so here's opening ponder. Let's take a look at my hand. So I have the Cabal Therapy in hand, which is kind of unfortunate, but I can therapy to just get it out of my hand and like blind name something. I would probably name Force of Will. That's what like 90% of people name when they're playing combo decks. The double plow is pretty suspect. I definitely want to brainstorm and fix the hand. Luckily, I don't think they're playing Bowmasters. They haven't shown me any indication they're playing Bowmasters. They may actually be playing Bowmasters, though. I'm going to wait a turn just because I want to be able to put cards away with, and that's what I'm going to do here. I don't think that they're likely to have days. Most 4-color control decks do not play days. Sultai Beans does play days, but this is clearly not Sultai Beans. So I'm like, all right, I'll just play it and I'll see what I draw in case I don't want to play this Misty. So I'm able to put a Soul Guide Lantern back, and I think the Therapy probably goes back. Yeah. So now my hand looks quite a bit better. All right, I've got half the combo. I'm not wild about having 2 plows, but I'm going to fire a plow at Lavinia here. So I think what I do here is I just fetch and I just plow immediately. And I opted to go ahead and get planes just in case they have a Wasteland plan. Sometimes these 80-card Yorion control decks, they will play Wasteland and they'll play like a Life from the Loam, and getting wasted out of the game is no fun. That's one way to lose a game where you're probably pretty favored, which I feel like I am at this point. So so I'm like, okay, I'm going to play your Lavinia, and they're like, okay, well, cool. I'm just going to play another Lavinia. Now, can this combo work with Lavinia in play? No, it cannot, because the Dread Return is a 0 mana instant, and it'll get countered by Lavinia's ability. Same thing with Vexing Bauble, which is going to be printed in Modern Horizons 3, which I think will be kind of a pain, and is one of the reasons I'm playing 2 Prismatic Endings. Is it's a pretty clean answer. 1 mana to 1 mana answer to Vexing Bauble if we really need to get rid of it. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and I think I just attempt. Oh, yeah. So they force there. That's great. So Teferi, doing its best hymn to Torok impression since like 2018 or whenever it was printed. All right. So Lavinia comes in for some damage. We can go with the construct plan here. There's no reason not to just create a bunch of constructs and hit them with them. They're going to be reasonably big because we're going to have Shuko. So I have Meticulous Archive. So they did plow my construct there, which was aggressive, frankly, but they've got a lot of removal on hand. So I'm just going to go ahead and get another one. And again, like, that's one of the great things about this is you're not like, you don't necessarily have to go for it. If your opponent has no pressure or anything, you can just take it slow and create a bunch of constructs and distract them. And here, my opponent, again, I forgot to draw, and I think my top card was a Teferi. So unfortunately, I've already shuffled my deck, and because I was going to get my second Shuko with Urza Saga, and my opponent would have to trust, like, oh yeah, I know exactly what was on top of my deck. It just happened to be this Teferi that's incredibly damaging against your deck, right? So I'm like, no, I'll just take a natural draw. I screwed up, and I think that's what the judge would tell, like if we call the judge in real life. So again, because we're enforcing the rules ourselves, we just have to kind of make it as close to competitive REL. The goal is not to win. We're playing to get better. Nobody tries to become like a Cockatrice hero, right? There's no trophies on Cockatrice. You're just playing to get better. So, so it resolves. Unfortunately, I draw a terrible card. I draw the Cabal Therapy that I really just want in my deck. And I don't even really know what I would name if I were to therapy here. So, yeah, I just have to just kind of chill. I might get okay, I am going to therapy, and I named Dress Down. Dress Down makes sense in the context of, like, I've got a construct here. It's going to cantrip. Yeah, so I'm just going to do that, and I see that they have plow and everything, and I have zero hope of my construct surviving. But technically it was kind of a 3-for-1, right? Like, because they used a removal spell on the first construct, they're using a removal spell on the second construct. I've still got my Shuko in play. So, yeah, not terrible. All right, so now I don't know what they've got going on. I still can't win because of Lavinia. I'm going to have to plow, and I'm not going to... I don't think I plowed now. Yeah, I'll wait. Okay, and unfortunately, because of Lavinia, I can't force if they fluster this, but I can pay for it. All right, so they don't actually stop my Lavinia because now I've got... they can't fluster profitably, so they don't bother flustering. So now I can just go off. And what they don't know is that I have force in hand. So they're going to Leyline Bind. Unfortunately, Shuko equips its sorcerer speed, not instant speed. So we're going to go ahead and... that did trigger 6 times. It didn't do anything, but it did trigger 6 times. That's just how the rules work. So my Leyline, my Cephalid is removed from play. Now I can go ahead and Ceph here, and they just scoop. Now, technically, what do they have in hand? Let's go back here. They had Yorion, they had Flusterstorm. So I wasn't going to cast enough spells for Flusterstorm to come on. I was just going to cast like a... Actually, do I know that they have Flusterstorm in hand? I think I may know that they have it in hand. So when I therapy, I can name Flusterstorm, and then I can just remove it, and then they've got nothing going on. So I think I do know there are 2 cards in hand. And so, yeah, it is deterministic that I'm going to win there. Okay. So now we do a second set. And I think we're just running it back with the same deck. Actually, this might be a different deck. This might be a different version of the Yorion deck. I'm not sure. I didn't ask my opponent. So this time I roll a 12, and then they just ask if they can be on the play. I'm like, sure. Yeah. And I mean, like, I'm always in favor of doing things that make it harder for me to win, like just letting my opponent be on the play. Because what I'm trying to do, I'm not trying to like get some killer win streak, which you're going to see. I do get a killer win streak. But what I'm really trying to do is just, is this deck any good? Is this worth playing? Is it worth shelling out a bunch of money on MTGO to buy these? I'm not in the creator program. Like, I started publishing videos too late to be able to apply for that, because I just started publishing videos like a month and a half ago. So eventually maybe I'll get in there. But I actually have to pay like, $90 or whatever worth of tickets to get these 3 Nadus if I want to be able to play this deck. So yeah, like, is this even worth playing? And that's one of the great things about Cockatrice is you can seriously play test your brews to see if it's really worth investing in getting the digital cards. Okay. So yeah, and just to reiterate, there's no like economy on Cockatrice. You have any card you want. You can have as many cards as you want. You can have as many decks as you want. There's no like artificial scarcity on Cockatrice. So my hand here, I have the turn 2 basically, and against blue decks, I don't make them have it. I don't think that's correct. I think it's better to just take your time. You could argue that playing this Nomads out was dumb, and you're going to see here in a minute that I do get punished for playing that out. Yep, there's the Bowmaster. Bowmasters doesn't affect our deck as badly as it affects a lot of decks because we really just have the cantrips. So here they're going to start beating us down. They're going to be shuffling through their deck and filtering. They have a very strong hand. I mean, it doesn't get much stronger than this. And they've already got Bowmaster Supremacy, which they're always going to have because I don't play Bowmasters in this deck. I think this is the first deck I played in a while. Well, I guess I played the... sorry, I'm going off on tangents. But yeah, I played some Jeskai builds recently that didn't have Bowmasters in it. But like, you should play Bowmasters if you can. And fun fact, I do have a Yorion version of this deck that does have 4 Bowmasters in it. And it has a little bit more black. But I think that the 60 card build is better. And I think almost always 60 card builds are better than Yorion builds of most decks. So, all right. With the exception being Esper and Death and Taxes. I do think that those decks benefit from having Yorion. Okay. So let's go Urza Saga here. We're going to go get a Shuko. We're going to have some pretty powerful constructs. And we're going to be able to attack in here for 4. So it's a 4/3. It's like 3 artifacts plus the +1/+0 from Shuko. Not bad, considering it's just like some land that also happened to get our combo piece. Again, Urza's Saga is one of the reasons why this ancient deck, like Cephalid Breakfast has existed for like more than 20 years, maybe 25 years. It's an ancient deck, but it's become more competitive now with Urza's Saga, right? And now it's going to become really competitive with Nadu. So, I'm doing damage, and I'm actually like winning the race here. I've been very disciplined in that about not playing out cantrips. So they're actually ending my my Shuko, I believe, which means I just have 3 3s, but I can still hit pretty hard with those. So what I don't know is that they've got a mono removal hand, and of course, Solitude is one of the best cards you can have against my deck. So here I have Nadu, but I don't have the ability to use it because they've removed my Shuko. I do want to play it out though because it is a clock. They're going up the Beanstalk here. I let it resolve. Okay, and so now they're targeting this. I do get a trigger whenever he's targeted. So it's kind of like the Leovold effect. So, so I go ahead and get Mystic Archive so I can look at my top card. I flip a Strand into my graveyard because I'm looking for something better. And, I find a Hedge Maze. Okay, so now I can look at the top card of that. So, again, I'm just hoping to get a... Just hoping to get something I can use to force that plow, because even though the plow doesn't resolve until after Nadu's trigger, so you might flip like a Force of Will or something. And of course, if I had flipped Force of Will, I would have been able to stop that. Now, I wouldn't have been able to stop the Solitude, which they probably would have just hit it with that. So my opponent hasn't actually seen Nadu go off yet. I don't think because the first 2 games, Nadu didn't go off. But I think they are smart enough to realize that Nadu is going to be incredibly damaging if it's able to stay on the table. So unfortunately here I Teferied and upticked because I want to be able to protect Cephalid Illusionist, and they were able to Prismatic End my Teferi for no value on my side. And they're also able to overpay for Prismatic Ending, meaning that they can exile because it's a 5 casting cost. You don't have to just pay 1 per color. You can overpay, it's the next spell. So you can pay as much as you want. And so yeah, they get to draw off of Beanstalk as well. And they draw Field of the Dead. And they decided to do this after it cast. This is one of the things, like, because it's kind of like a gentleman's and ladies game here on Cockatrice, where you're enforcing your own rules. Like on MTGO, they just pay 2 and they'd be like, oh wait, I meant to pay 5, but it's too late. Here they can be like, hey, do you mind if I pay 5? I would like to draw a card off that. And since they didn't have any additional information or anything like that, I can just be like, sure, why not? Again, I'd much rather them be advantaged in some ways than me because I'm trying to verify that this deck is good. Okay, so I'm going to go fetch. I'm going to therapy them. I name Bowmasters, but they don't have Bowmasters. I just see the Field of the Dead. How far are we from Field of the Dead? We are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they're 2 cards. Wait, 6. So yeah, when they play the Field of the Dead, they're going to start getting these zombies. So I'm Bowmastering. I'm pondering into Bowmasters here. But I really need to get this Bowmasters out of play. And I think I see a window to plow it. And do I plow it? Okay. So they're attacking. They've got a really strong board presence. I think I need to plow. And I need to ponder. And I need to find some action here. Okay, so they still have Leyline Binding in hand that they can cast. Let's see what I do here. So I ponder. I find Nomads. I find Ceph. But they're able to remove it, and they are so far ahead that I just scoop. Okay. So again, keep in mind, like, I won the first set, and now I'm down a game in the second set. I can tell from looking at the thing, this is a very short game, which probably means I win. Okay, so Cockatrice is not terrible. I mean, it does stop their Earl plan, and it also pairs well with Nadu. Cockatrice is just one of those cards that we can play in the deck just because we are pretty heavy white, and there's enough synergy with Lavinia and with Nadu that I think it's worth playing, even though it is not a blue source, and it is wastelandable. So I keep this hand. This hand does not have a B, but it does have it does not have an A, but it does have a B. It has a Shuko, and it has force protection, and it's got plows. Cockatrice, it's got land. I think you keep this, and then you hope that you can force like a Beanstalk or something like that. And judging by my hand, so I'm going to go get a Surveil Land, a Hedge Maze, and I keep the top card because it's a Ponder, and I think that's a better than average draw. Again, like in a lot of decks, you probably wouldn't want to keep a Ponder because you'd be like, well, I've got better cards than Ponder. But in this deck, you've got so many bad cards that you want to avoid. These cantrips are really important to avoiding drawing Dread Return and Thassa's Oracle and stuff like that. All right, so I'm pondering. Unfortunately, the user interface doesn't show what my ponder is, but I do get a fetch. So I'm probably just going to activate this fetch and go get another Surveil Land. Just get crazy quality, card quality. Oh, so I don't fetch there. I draw a Brainstorm. Okay, so Serenity is a powerful sideboard card. If you look at their deck, it's not going to kill One Ring, but it would kill Leyline Binding if they are able to bind. But we do have Nomads now. So I choose not to play anything. I'm going to play out the Nomad and the Cephalid at the same time. I kind of learned my lesson from the previous game where they Bowmastered my Nomad. If I hadn't been greedy and played out that Nomad, I may very well have won the previous game. Okay, so I'm just getting my Surveil Land, and I dump, like, I think a duplicate Serenity into the graveyard. So great card selection there. That saved me a dead draw. Got a Narcomoeba here. I'm going to play out Teferi. So amazingly, Teferi is not countered, and I'm able to draw a card. I just go ahead and draw a card to get value because I know once Teferi's down, and they actually don't even... well, they have the ability to go get black mana. Their hand is incredibly white and artifact heavy. They don't have any blue spells. This Beanstalk is bad news because it means they can draw from Binding. They can draw from Solitude. I almost always force this, and I think the fact that I have a Force of Will and an Narcomoeba, I should force this, especially because I've got the combo in hand now. The alternative is, of course, I can just protect the combo. Unless they can remove... so let's see, they have red, blue, green... so they would have to go get... they're not going to be able to... so if they draw a land, play a land, fetch like a Savannah or something, then they'd have to draw like a black land, basically, or an untapped land. Then they could go fetch and they could O-ring my Teferi, and if they O-ring my Teferi, then I wouldn't be able to necessarily win next turn. But I think it's... like, I probably think about that for a second, then I'm just like, nah, I'm going to force that. I didn't force it? Okay, interesting. So this is one of the things I'm still trying to get used to, is like with Soul type beans, I would always force a beanstalk. I would never let that resolve. Like, I'm trying to think of a circumstance, but here, I mean, it is going to protect my combo, right? So, yeah. So they try to get rid of Teferi. Now they're tapped out. So they did exactly what I thought they would do. They got a black land and they got a tundra, and then they attempted to exile, and they got to draw a card. But importantly, they don't have any interaction because Teferi stops them from being able to solitude or anything like that. So now I can just, my opponent says, "Show me the way home," right? And then I just go off, and they show me their hand. And they said so much gas, and they did indeed have a ridiculously strong hand. But part of the card advantage the combo decks have is ending the game when your opponent still has 7 cards in hand, right? That's like you drew 7 additional cards, virtual card advantage from just winning from tempo. Okay, this hand is insane. Look at this. Like, I really can't. Like, obviously, Narcomoeba is kind of a stinker. Serenity is very conditional. Serenity could potentially blow up a beanstalk here, but there's no way I throw back this. Do I? I don't have a way to get a second land. I think it's fine to just keep this. Yeah, I mean, I have the combo. Oh, I did throw it back. Wow, I can't believe I threw that back. But I was just thinking, like, I could be stranded on 1 land. Yeah, I think that might be the first time I've ever thrown back a potential turn 2, but it's not a guaranteed turn 2 because I don't have the land, and also I'm against a control deck, so nothing's guaranteed when your opponent could be playing Force of Will. All right, so again, drew the Stinky Savannah that I think I removed that from my deck today, actually. I know I keep saying every round, like, oh yeah, that's the last time you'll see the Savannah. Okay. And they Beanstalk, which I can't interact with. I'm going to go get a Surveil land. And I put Cabal Therapy in the yard, precisely where it belongs. Don't have to draw that card. And now I'm going to Prismatic End. So, again, they're up a card from that interaction, but you just have to get rid of Beanstalk. Even when you're a combo deck, like, it's just too powerful. All right. So, Lavinia has to be dealt with before we can win with the combo. We don't immediately have a way to get rid of her. We could play this and bounce her, which isn't terrible. My opponent does have access to black next turn. Teferi is a really terrible card in a Bowmaster's world, but I still think it's better than cards like Ormchant, which just is so terrible if you're not going off specifically against like a blue deck. So you may notice like most Cephalid Breakfast decks play 2 Ormchant. I play 0 Ormchant. I don't like it. All right. It's probably right in some form, but it's not right here. Okay, so they're going to Veil here, which is great for them because now I can't bounce their Lavinia. They do get to draw a card. They have to do it now before Teferi resolves. They can't do it. So yeah, I'm just going to play Teferi, and I think I just plus it. Now, why did I plus it? Why? They're going to be able to attack it. They're going to be able to take it. They're going to be able to potentially Bowmasters. They're going to take a lot of loyalty, but they can't kill it. So likely I will have one turn where I can do stuff and they can't stop me. And we're going to see just what that is. I'll give you a hint. It starts with an N and it ends with a do. Okay, so the Leyline Bind, that's unfortunate, but thankfully I've gotten rid of the Beanstalk. Otherwise that would have been a cantrip. Okay, and you may note, like, why is Yorion on the stack? Sometimes people, don't use you can like right click and you can create like a companion token and put that on top of it. But again, because it's like paper magic, some people just lay their Yorion smack in the middle of their playmat, and that's the companion zone or whatever, right? So, okay. So interestingly, I decided to pass, and I think that's because I'm like, okay, I'm going to take a more defensive posture. I'm going to go ahead and create some equipment token or some construct tokens here, and we'll see where that leads us. My opponent doesn't have like a ton of pressure, and that's the great thing about playing these combo decks is because my opponent has to respect my combo plan, they can't be as aggressive. They're boarding out probably a lot of the more proactive cards to try to stop my my combo, and that's certainly what I do when I play a combo deck against a or control deck against a combo deck. Is I basically take out a lot of my proactive plan so that I can just stop them from winning. So I'm able to create a token here. They can't immediately remove it. They did Bowmaster my other token. So I'm going to go get a Shuko. And I have another Urza Saga here. And I'm just going to play with the Narcomoeba. You might think, like, who cares about a Narcomoeba? But it's cool. You want material to point Nadu, to point your nomads at so you can draw cards. So this is extra material. And I think it's so powerful that I might not even trade off. But if they attack with Lavinia, I'm absolutely going to trade off. And they do. So I trade off. Now, you might be thinking, well, that was a bad play. Why the hell did they do that? Like, they don't have a lot else going on. They do have Bowmasters out. But, yeah, like, technically, I don't think Lavinia even had any impact on the game. It was just a 2/2 body here. So it's not necessarily wrong, even though I could definitely see people, like, in the audience, people in the comments saying, like, that was a crazy play. What the hell is wrong with him? Okay, so now I've got the combo. Check this out. Nadu time. And looking at their hand, they have Flusterstorm, a bad card that I refuse to play. I think it's, like, terrible. I just think it's like a bad Spell Pierce because it can only hit instants and sorceries. It can't stop One Ring. It can't stop Planeswalkers. I just think this card is overplayed for what it is. I can see why it's so good in Vintage, but I don't think it's a Legacy playable card. That is my opinion. I will fight you. Change my mind in the comments. Okay, so here we are. We're going to draw cards with Nomads. Okay, 1 card, 2 card, 3 card, 4 card, 5 card, 6 card. How insane was that? 6 cards. And some of them were just lands that went straight into play. Okay, so one thing I could do is I could go ahead and crack this and play a second Nadu and basically do it again. Nadu, like, it basically resets when you play a new Nadu. It's the same thing if you Karakas the Nadu back to hand and replay it. It's like technically a different instance of Nadu. So you can basically just draw 12 cards in a turn if you have a second Nadu in hand. But I think what I do here, I might ponder just to see if I can find another creature. A lot of times I'll just, like, stay put. Okay, and so I just chose to attack here, and they took the damage. And one great thing, again, is I can do this during my opponent's turn. So they're doing good card value stuff. They got Field of the Dead on the line. They've got Bowmasters. They had another Lavinia. They may have known they had that Lavinia, which maybe is why they traded off the other one. But it doesn't matter. Like, 1 card, 2 card, 3 card, 4 card, 5 card, 6 card. And at this point, I've drawn 12 cards. They're scooping. Like, an Atraxa for 3 or 4 cards in Legacy is so backbreaking, most people just concede. Right? Now, imagine this card that doesn't even have to be cheated into play. It can just be cast. Boom, 12 cards. So, for the record, like, I won that. So I've won 4 consecutive matches. Okay, now we're going to go into match number 5 versus Estiv. I can't remember what they're on. Lands. Okay. So let's take a look at their hand. So I mull. And this hand has Soul Guide Lantern, Prismatic Ending, 4 lands. Again, against an unknown opponent, it's got half the combo. Against an unknown opponent, I'm not sure that I keep this. I do keep this. Okay, so it's a land-heavy hand. I've got 3 lands. But, again, I have hope that I'm going to be able to sculpt my hand a little bit. And it turns out that, like, having the Soul Guide Lantern is really powerful against lands. I had no idea they're on lands. This isn't like MTGO. You can't just, like, Google them and find them. Nobody's storing the records of what people are playing on Cockatrice. So you are always playing in the blind as though you're going to a tournament. Like a really big tournament, and you don't have time to scout. Okay, so I play out the Soul Guide, and I just hit that card. I don't expect that to have any impact on the game. I don't think it does. But it's good to just make efficient use of my mana. So now I play out Shuko. They definitely know what I'm doing here. No other deck plays Shuko other than Breakfast. Nobody in their right mind, any format, would play Shuko. It's just a card that's played in a single deck in Legacy. Okay. All right. So there we go. We're getting the Pithing Needle, naming Shuko. I made it easy for him. So, I mean, I definitely, in retrospect, they had a Saga out. Like, I probably should have assumed that they had Pithing Needle. There was no reason to play that Shuko out. I've got nothing else going on. I could have just waited. So, yeah, that was probably a punt. Okay, but I have Nomads, and they don't have green. Wait, no, they don't have green mana. So I looked, and I'm like, oh, wait, they don't have green mana. Even if they have crop rotation, they can't do it. And I'm able to combo, and they scoop. 3 crop rotations, not enough green. Crazy, right? And I probably would have just held off because of fear of crop rotation. Okay, so game 2, Tireless Tracker. I haven't seen this card in a while. I'm surprised they're playing with it. This hand is probably a mulligan for them, just because like you don't want to be stuck on a single Mox Diamond, right? That's not good. Serenity, really powerful anti-lands, anti-saga deck. Like it's really good against obviously 8-cast, stuff like that. So I brought in Serenity, and I'm gonna go to town here. All right, so they are they mold, and they have a much better hand with Sphere of Resistance. So my hand is not great. It does have a Brainstorm to fix it. It has Counter Magic. This Counter Magic isn't really good. We don't know whether Serenity is going to be good. Let's see. Okay, so they are sculpting Sphere of Resistance. I think I brainstorm first to see what's going on. I could definitely just wait. I think it's actually fine to wait here. I shouldn't force this because I've got Serenity coming down, and it's going to take care of the exploration as well. And I don't know it, but it will also take care of Pithing Needle. So I do think I just let it resolve. Yeah. And I in retrospect, I definitely think that's correct. Just play patiently. I've got lots of land, including access to basic lands. Now they showed me Wasteland, I have no reason not to get it. But unfortunately, the Plains is already in my hand. So here, I'm just going to have to play it out. And they're going to be able to waste me, but they're going to lose 1, 2... They're not going to lose this. They're going to activate it, probably to draw a card. It's worth noting that this would have stopped me from being able to combo off if I hadn't gotten rid of it. And I do have half the combo in my hand. Also worth noting that I have Force Negation in my hand, which is the most powerful card you can have against a lands player, other than maybe Surgical Extraction. Because Loam, if you get rid of Loam from a lands deck, their deck just falls apart. They can't function without Loam. They don't have any card draw engine or anything like that. And they're just top decking, Mox Diamonds and stuff. Okay, so we've got Nadu. We don't have green mana. I think there was one game where I got wasted off my green mana. This might be the game. I can't remember. Sphere of Resistance. Okay, so I force. They waste. All right. They name Nomads. I brainstorm here. I get lots of lands. I screw up. I could have hedge maze to get rid of the second Nadu. I didn't need the second Nadu, but instead I have to draw through it. Yeah, so still getting better with the deck and making a few suboptimal plays. Now I can start Naduing. Oh wait, I can't because of this. Okay, so I basically just played him out as a beater, and I just had to wait until I can remove the Pithing Needle before I can do anything. There's that second Nadu that I said I wish I'd been able to put back. They've got a lot. This is a copy. It's not an actual additional card. So they have 2 Urza Sagas. Keep in mind they can do the trick with Urza Saga where they just get the counters on it, the Saga trigger tokens, and then they can just turn it into a force, and they have unlimited Urza Sagas for the rest of the game, right? Really strong. So I can bounce Nadu here, and now I can play Cephalid if I want, but it's not going to do anything. I just play Nadu back. I play out the Cephalid Illusionist. Now they have so much attack power, I'm going to have to start jumping. All right, and these are 6/6s. They use tokens instead of manually adjusting the power for some reason. So it's coming in, and I have to block one of them. I think the correct play is to block with Nomads here. I mean, I could definitely block with Nadu. This is the key play in the game. What do I block with? So think about it for a second. What would you block? Okay, you got 2 6/6s coming in your 12 life. You're going to let one through, but one of these has to die. If it's the Cephalid Illusionist, then you can't go get your combo. If you draw a Shuko or if you draw... This is going to help us win. Now, Nadu is going to draw so many cards it might as well help us win. Nadu's not guaranteed GG. In fact, I think I lose a game where I Nadu a whole bunch later on in this video. You're going to see that. Okay. So I sacked the Ceph. I drew another Ceph, so I could just play that out. Ceph does have the ability to essentially kind of do a very crappy version of Maze of Ith, where basically you block with Cephalid Illusionist and then you make it so that you fog this creature and the other creature that are attacking and no damage is dealt. terrible ability, very overcosted, but it is something you can do if you really need to stop your opponent from dealing combat damage. Okay, don't log me out. Okay. And now I've got the combo again, but I don't have the ability to activate. All right. Brainstorm. So I did find Shuko. If I'd kept the Cephalid Illusionist around, I would be able to use it. So I can Shuko twice. I get a Saga, but I don't have enough. So that's an instance of getting Nadu online and not winning. This is a slog of a game. And most games against lands are going to be slogs. I threw back my initial hand, by the way. It was terrible. 2 cards that you don't want in your hand and only 1 land. Force Negation. It's a pity because Force Negation is really strong, but this deck mulligans really well because you almost always have cards you want to put back. So I do that, and Serenity looks strong here. Let's look at my opponent's hand. Again, this was not information that was available to me when I was playing. I didn't know. It was just like any other game of Magic. I couldn't see what was in my opponent's hand. But now we can look at that in the replay, and we can see that Choke is going to be strong here. We can also see that they've got a quick Sylvan Library. They have Bojuka Bog in hand, which means they're not going to be able to get it off of crop rotation. So this is like a blessing. All right. So I'm starting a Mold of 5. Mox Diamond. All right. Like this Serenities can't jump onto the table fast enough. Okay. So they choked me. Turn 1. Locked off my island. I have exactly 1 fetchable land in my deck that is not an island. It's a plains. So Hedge Maze, if I play that out, I can't do anything. It's just going to stay tapped. So what I need to do is draw, some other land. And I do. I draw an Underground Sea, so I'm about to tap it forever, but it's going to power out Serenity. The only thing they have in their deck that can stop Serenity, I believe, is Boseiju. So I play out Serenity. These are tapped forever if Serenity doesn't resolve. If Serenity resolves, cha-ching. All right, so they know that I'm going to get that mana back next turn. You got a lot of wastelands. There's no reason to waste there. That would have been tapped next turn anyway because the untapped step comes before Serenity. But yeah, they play out a second wasteland. They've got Life from the Loam active. I don't have anything to stop Life from the Loam, so I'm going to have to hope to draw something. Force of Will, I could definitely force a Loam. Other cards in their hand that are relevant. Swords of Plowshares breaks up my combo if I ever get to that point. All right, they're wasting me again. This is a low resource slog. Pondering, I find myself an illusionist. Little do I know that my opponent has Swords of Plowshares and it's not going to matter. Okay, and now I found Surgical, which I absolutely want to cast. I think effective immediately. Now there is some threat that like they could Tranquil Thicket or something like that and cycle to get the Loam out of their graveyard. But as I said earlier, when you get a chance to remove your opponent's Loams, you take it. So that's just going to slow the game down even more. Now they don't have their engine. We're really top decking in idiot mode here. I get to look at their deck. I'll just pause real quick. We can take a look at their deck. They've got double Dark Depths, and they've got quadruple Urza Sagas as their win cons. They don't have. Oh, they also have these Tireless Trackers, and they have all 4 spheres still in. Okay, so we brainstorm. They choose a weird time to waste me. Yeah, like I almost always just waste in my opponent's upkeep in case they have, unless they tap a land and I'm just going after a tap land, then I'll just waste it during my turn. But I almost never waste during like their main phase or end of turn or anything like that. Okay, so Sphere of Resistance. There's no reason to counter this. It is kind of a pain. They don't actually have Waste Lock because, again, I took out their... how many Wastelands have they used? So they've used 2 Wastelands. So they still have 2 in their deck. Yeah, I don't think it's correct to counter this. It's kind of a pain, but we can just draw through it. Let's see if I agree with that sentiment. Nope, I force it. And I think forcing it was probably a mistake. I went ahead and pitched Cephalid too. At this point, they're at 8 life because they drew some cards with Sylvan Library. Sorry if we kind of like sped past that, but they're so low in life that I'm actually thinking like, oh, I'll just resolve Brazen Borrower and beat them down. And so that's my plan. Unfortunately, if you look at my mana, I don't have Brazen Borrower casting mana. They've got a bunch of artifact like things that don't do anything. Lava Spur Boots doesn't do anything. Exploration does like nothing. It's a terrible card when they don't have Loam to draw more than one card a turn. Okay, Sylvan Library's back. This is potentially problematic, but I've got Prismatic Ending. And now I know why it was extra stupid of me. It was extra dumb of me, sorry, for me to force that Sphere of Resistance. The reason is because I actually knew from, I think, a Ponder or a Brainstorm that I had a Prismatic Ending on top of my deck. And here I'm thinking, man, I deserve a Louvre so bad. That was such a dumb play. Yeah, but the upside is I still have Prismatic Ending to remove Sylvan Library, which actually would have been much more devastating than the Sphere. But I probably would have just forced the Sylvan Library instead. So it doesn't really matter. A misplay is still a misplay. Okay. So they are porting me a little bit. They got Soul Guide Lantern, which doesn't do much, but it does take out my Cabal Therapy, which I don't think I'd bother flashing back. I guess if I was going off, I'd flash it back. The real threat here is that this stops me from being able to win. So you might be thinking, why doesn't he flash in Brazen Borrower and just win? But, oh no. The socket. All right. So this is one of the things is you have to be connected to be able to access these. Okay, so we're in here. I'm just going to very quickly replay the match. Sorry about that. Actually, I can just jump back to where we were. So we're right around here. Sphere Resistance. Again, I forced it. And I could have just drawn Prismatic Ending and used that. So I'm going to end there. Okay, and we're getting closer to a point where I can actually cast Brazen Borrower. So I think that's where I put Therapy into the yard with the Surveil Land, and then the Exile Therapy with Soul Guide. Okay, we're back to where we were. Okay, so I now have Cephalid Illusionist again. I have 0 plans to go off. I can't even go off if I want to with Soul Guide out there. So this is Force of Will food. So really I just want to hit the Brazen Borrower out there. And I do. But unfortunately they've got Plow. Okay, and they're plowing here, which sucks. Now I can do Nadu. I'm not sure why I played this out. I think I played it out to bait removal so I could resolve Nadu, because it doesn't really do anything. They're at 8 life. I could attack. Oh, because I can't cast Nadu because I don't have any green sources. So if you look here, my Trop and my Hedge Maze. So I think I had a Savannah in my deck at this point. I can't remember if I took that out, but I screwed up and I put a Tundra in instead of a Trop. I'm supposed to have 2 Trops. Sorry, that explains the situation. So I can't technically cast Nadu this game. So it's a very kind of like stumbling over the finish line thing where I'm I'm attacking with Cephalid Illusionist and Narcomoeba. Like, this does happen. You do win with these sometimes. And my opponent just gets tired of getting beaten down with these weenies. And yeah, so they draw a bunch of cards out of frustration. And they would have eventually had the Thespian Sage Dark Depths combo, but I would have won by then. So, like, they just had a bunch of nothing coming. So they conceded and drew 3 cards. Yeah. So, again, I think it was a premature concession. I would have played it out, but they would have lost anyway, looking at their hand. So, okay. So now we're going to go on to the next replay, which is versus Top Lot. I have no idea what Top Lot means. Like the U lot. It's like a British kind of like way of referring to a group of people. Maybe it's like Top Lot, like the top folks. Okay, so I mulliganed. I got a bad mulligan. This is no lander. We're not keeping this. Mulligan again. Can't go deeper than this. Luckily, we can put back Dread Return, which is better in our deck. We could probably put back Teferi because it's just like a slow card. And we can look at our opponent's hand and we can see that they are on Grixis Delver. Very scary deck. Okay. So I play out Archive and I decide to keep the top card. They waste it. All right. And let's take a look at their hand now. They've got Bowmasters. They've got Bolt. There's no way in heck that I'm comboing off. And I'm pretty sure I'll lose this game. I do have the combo. But you'd have to be crazy to play out the combo against Grixis Delver unless you've got like a lot of protection. Unfortunately, because I'm mulled twice, I'm just so low on cards. I just don't think it's in the cards that I'm going to be able to win here. And at some point, like, they're attacking a whole lot, and I just have to kind of go for it. So I Hedge Maze. Yeah, I just keep the top, which is an Urza Saga. Again, land. Really, like, they're not presenting a lot of pressure. They've got 3. So I think I play this out and they can just bolt it, which that's just how it is. Like I could force. What I really need to do is resolve this and somehow resolve Nadu, and that's just never going to happen. So yeah, this game's kind of painful to watch because I'm just so screwed. And I force here, and then they just have another bolt. And unfortunately, yeah, like they had everything. They had a very strong opening. And I'm just going to sit here with, like, I can create Saga tokens, but, you know, they've this 7/7 Murktide. So I play it out, you know, because I'm on this, like, 6-game winning streak. I don't want to lose. 5-game winning streak. Okay, so now I'm equipping here. And I'm able to do this a bunch. But, of course, they have force. Oh, okay. So I'm like, okay. So I flashback and they actually force the therapy. So that would have named force. And they have 5 untapped mana and force is their last card. So actually, as crazy as this game was, we got kind of close to winning. But, of course, they're going to force my Dread Return, and that's the game. Okay, game 2. All right. This is not a really strong hand, but Grafdigger's Cage does stop the card, and they've got Force of Will. Like, if I were Delver, I might actually keep this, knowing that they don't have any way to like, Breakfast doesn't play any Wastelands. Grafdigger's Cage shuts off my A plan. They wouldn't know that I would have. I would have to throw this back again. Like, I got really bad draws, both of these games. Yeah. So I pitched that back, and I'm rewarded with this hand that is quite stable. You can put the Tundra back. I think that's what I put back, and then I Meticulous Archive here. Or do I play? I may start with an island. I think you start island so you have Hydroblast in case they play DRC. So they're gonna mulligan, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, and so they get a really strong mulligan here. They've got a force effect, which this force of negation is really strong in this matchup because it will hit like nobody's going to Cabal Therapy for force negation usually. They're going to Cabal Therapy for force of will, and because they only get one shot, often they're going to name it wrong, and you're still going to have the force negation to stop the Dread Return. So that's one reason why it's so good. So they keep 6, I keep 6. We're off to the races. Island. This is risky because I could just wait until they untap, and then I could hit it with Daze Protection. But this denies them value, and it denies them quite a bit of value because they're going to be able to Mishra's Bauble and flip a card. So, and also because this is done during their turn, they're not going to be able to force negation. So, yeah, they don't get any value off this Bauble. So I brainstorm here. I put some bad cards back, and I'm going to be able to fetch them away. Just classic blue deck, stuff that you do to gain an incremental advantage. All right. So they've got Delver out. I don't really have a clean way to deal with it. So I think I just let it hit. Okay, and I Hedge Maze, and let's see if I keep my top. Thassa's Oracle. That's a card that I'm very happy to dodge. Because if you have Thassa's Oracle in your hand and you want to go off, it either means you need to wait until the subsequent turn and hardcast Thassa's Oracle after you've exiled all but 1 or 2 cards in your library, or it means that you're going to have to therapy yourself instead of them. Name Thassa's Oracle so you can get it in your graveyard so you can Dread Return it. It's not pretty. Okay. Here I got Carpet. Carpet's insane. My opponent could force a negation this, and they should force a negation this. Like, this is going to unlock a lot of things, but they may be looking at my deck, my cards, and thinking, like, they've got so many cards. I'm playing against a combo deck. Do I really care about the mana, or do I care about the powerful spells that it enables? So let's see whether they force it. Yeah, they did force it. So a lot of respect, and we'll see in the subsequent game just how powerful Carpet becomes. Okay, so they're hitting me. They got Dragon's Rage Channeler. They're very favored here, frankly. I've got very little going on. That is the best possible draw in my deck. That is such a good draw, it's not even funny. And yeah, I mean, I think we have to go for it. So the Nadu line, if we go Nomad into Nadu, that is safer, but that leaves us open to Daze, which they have. Again, I don't know that they have that, but I suspect they could have it. So I'm just going to play this out. And with Daze Protection, I'm going to combo. And so there we go. They're going to do this, but it's futile. I'm just going to go fetch. I mean, you should always do this just to make sure that they actually have like a fetchable that enters play, untapped. But of course I'm going to have that. And when I fetch, they just concede. So just to recap, they had 6 flying power on the table. They had Daze. They had Meltdown, which doesn't do a lot against our current deck. But it's a reasonable sideboard card to bring in. I probably wouldn't bring it in against Breakfast, but I think it's a reasonable thing because it does deal with our construct plans and it gets rid of Shuko. Okay, so here we go. Let's take a look. This is a very strong hand. My goodness, so strong. They don't have black for Bowmasters, but they've got Ponder. They've got 3 lands. They can beat us down pretty quickly with Murktide. All right. So they're on the play. Our hand is pretty janky. Like this is like basically the worst hand that I would keep. And because you're up against Delver, you don't really want to because Delver can overwhelm you with 1-for-1 answers, you don't really want to mulligan too much. Especially Grixis Delver. I think the other Delver, even though Teamer Delver is better against the field and it's considered the best form of Delver right now, Grixis Delver is much scarier for us. So this is the harder of the Delver matchups. Right. So we both have kept 7. They pondered and they found another Murktide, which is not really what they want to be fighting. Maybe I'm not sure why they kept that Murktide. They may have liked the other cards in there. Okay. And yeah, our hand hasn't dramatically improved. We go ahead and play the Saga out because the Saga is a slow path to the combo. Eventually, this will tick up to getting us the Shuko. All right, and this is where things get crazy. Okay, so they've got 2 mana out, and now we can carpet and we can go ahead and I think brainstorm to find. So we already fetched, so we're not going to be able to get a land drop, but we can play out a Narcomoeba. Narcomoeba is not terrible. I mean, it may not get better than that. Oh, actually, sorry. We use the mana from Carpet to be able to create a token. So normally we wouldn't be able to do anything. Normally a turn 1 Saga, you're just doing it so you can get your Shuko. But here we were actually able to kind of ramp with the Carpet. Here they play a Counterbalance, which is scary. I mean, most of our deck is 1 or 2 mana cards. Okay, and I'm able to add 3 blue, and I can just go ahead and do that again. Now I can equip, and I can also play a Narcomoeba. Here they reveal that they don't have anything going on card-wise, but I can't really take advantage of it. But I do know now that they flip a Pyroblast, so I know they're drawing a Pyroblast. Okay, and I attack for 4, so we're racing. Okay, they bolt the Construct, which also shrinks the other Construct. So I go ahead and attack first. I'm going to plan to use the Carpet the second round. So they Bowmasters here to try to reduce damage, and this is a fatal mistake, by the way. They should have just held their Bowmasters, because watch what's going to happen here. And I've made this mistake so much playing against Carpet. I lose against Carpet a lot, or I'm sorry, against Breakfast a lot. Breakfast is a very hard deck to play against. You have to practice this matchup a lot if you want to be able to consistently win it. Even when you're technically favored, I think the good Grixis Delver player is probably 75-25 against a Carpet deck. But because they made the mistake of Bowmastering here to take out my token, which probably felt like a really good deal at the time, they left themselves vulnerable to double Cephalid Illusionist. So we don't know that they're not going to have... So I add the quadruple blue here. We don't know that we're going to be able to get this through because they do have Counterbalance. We know they have a Pyroblast, so at least one of these is going to die. So they blast, and I don't know what the other 2 cards are. They could very well be, Force Blue card. But I do know that we have plenty of mana, and I do it a second time, and it resolves. So we win the match. So for those of you keeping score at home, I think is that 6 matches in a row? I think it's 6 in a row. Pretty good. Again, these are not serious. If you were on MTGO doing a league, you get, if you're 4-0, you get paired against other people that are 4-0. And it just, there's a ratcheting effect and the competition gets more and more intense. But so we're not getting that effect here. So just because I'm 6-0 doesn't mean like this is a phenomenal deck. But it is good that we haven't been losing any matches. Okay. So here, let's take a look. Our opponent's playing Show and Tell. Of course, I don't know that. But I do know that I've got a path to Nadu going off Shuko. So we play out our Tarn. We're probably going to go get Surveil Land. And yeah, we get the green one because we're planning to eventually get Nadu into play. Saga is fine. It doesn't hurt to just get that online, counting up toward 3 while we build our mana. So we ponder. So our ponder was Plow. Yeah, we don't want to draw that Plow, but I think unfortunately we're going to draw at least one card we didn't want because we played that Saga last turn. Yeah, so I draw the Plow. Doesn't do anything. By the way, I think I had a force fight over One Ring. I think that was correct to stop One Ring. At this point, just from the Volk into Ancient Tomb, pretty much the only deck that plays those is going to be a Sneak and Show deck. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to be able to create a construct here, and I do. And then the question is, do I create another construct? I think the answer is no. I think we just go ahead and get the thing and go off with Nadu. Yeah, and that's what I do. So we're going to play Nadu out. Okay. So here we go. They don't have any removal, and we're going to be able to draw 4 cards. And yeah, look at that. So now we have Nomads, which means we can play that out and we can draw even more cards. And we can do it. That means we'll be able to do it during our opponent's turn next turn as well. So I didn't actually have another fetchable untapped white source. Like I couldn't fetch a plains with this Pluto Delta, but if I could have, I would have gone ahead and gotten the Nomads and done it even more. And then boom, we'd be getting 8 cards this turn instead of just 6. But 6 cards, not terrible, right? Not too shabby. Drawing 6 cards. Okay, Show and Tell. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a bunch of cards here. So I did get a force. It all happened very quickly, but look here. Brainstorm. And my opponent, did I even have a force? My opponent probably just assumes that I'm going to be able to brainstorm into a force. Or I mean, look at this mana. Look at how many lands I just put into play. Right? And I think my opponent says, like, great card that Nadu. Like, because Nadu's so ridiculous. Yeah. My opponent acknowledges the absurdity of Nadu. Yeah. Great card, Nadu. Absolutely correct. I respond. All right. Let's go to game 2. So here, this is a mediocre hand. I pitch it. So I've got Pithing Needle, which really just names Sneak Attack, which my opponent happens to have. And I have Force of Negation, which, you generally want to keep at least one force effect. This Teferi is kind of a dead card. It's unlikely to come down in time to matter. But it does pitch to force. What I'm really going to try to be doing is getting lands. My opponent also low on lands here, but they do have a daze. Therapy, if I go get the Underground Sea, the only thing in my deck of casts is Therapy. I think it's better to go ahead and cantrip here. And out of respect for the possibility of a Blood Moon type effect, I do go ahead and get my basic here. All right, and my opponent is just chilling, waiting for more land. They do technically have Simian Spirit Guide, so they can, if they want, Show and Tell next turn. And they're going to have a force, so they're going to be able to force it through. Some people will, on MTGO, I've encountered people Show and Telling just to get Sneak Attack into play faster. I think that's kind of an impatient play. And I think my opponent here, I've played against this person a lot, and I think they have the sense not to do that. They're going to wait for a payoff. All right, so I've needled Sneak Attack, and they drew a Traxa. So they are able to draw a bunch of cards here. I force their days. Great exchange for them. Traxa finds. I mean, this is the end for me here. The fact that they have force and a second Atraxa One ring. I mean, this is too strong for me to overcome. I'm like 2 turns away from being able to get. I mean, technically, yeah, I could just go get the. I could just go get the Shuko and still combo out here. All right, so now I've got okay, therapy. I mean, I know what's in their hand, so I know it makes sense to the therapy for force. Unfortunately, they are going to be able to counter that. So they one ring, and now not that it really matters, but basically I can go off, but they're going to have force, and I'm not going to have force. So I have a force, and I have a non-blue card. So I have to just hope that this works. And I go ahead and dump my entire deck. Again, keep in mind that I've already used the card. But yeah, I dump my entire deck into my graveyard. I've got like a hotkey to like put the top card into the graveyard. So it works really quickly. I do 3 at a time. Dread Return of Thassa's Oracle. Force of Will. Heartbreaker. But again, I didn't expect to win a game where Atrax's ETB resolved. Okay. Very short game here. And I have the turn 1. Not only do I have the turn 1, but I have some redundancy. Or it's not a turn 1, it's a turn 2. Okay, let's look at my opponent's hand. Blood Moon. Fury. ETB tapped land. The Surveil land. But Force of Will, Atraxa. This is pretty damn strong. Like, this is incredibly disruptive. And actually, Fury, like the one color that Atraxa is not, is red. So Fury doesn't pitch that. By the way, I don't know why Fury's art isn't loading in properly right now. Okay, so I'm able to surveil Cabal Therapy into my yard. All the better, because now I can flash that back. So Hedge Maze, again, I'm going to respect days, I think, here. I'm not going to play it out. Oh, I do play it out. And I think the reason to play it out here is I may not have another one. Okay, so my opponent plays out a land. Thankfully, they don't have the ability. Oh, the reason why is it's like an, oh, that's sweet retro border Fury. Yeah, I don't know why it didn't load in, but okay, so I wasn't sure if I was going to draw a land here, and I wanted to make sure that I would have the ability to go off next turn with Cephalid Illusionist, because I've got redundant Cephalid Illusionist and now redundant Nomads. I have basically no fear. I'm just going to keep tapping out and playing my combo pieces. They force, no big deal. I'll just wait till next turn. Now check this out. I go ahead and I fetch my island, so I'm going to be able to cast Cephalid Illusionist, but I do Brainstorm here to see if I can, if I want to force this. I find force, but I decide not to cast it because I can just protect myself with it. It turns out I didn't even need this protection here. So Blood Moon resolves, and I'm still going to go off. Yeah, and they kind of briefly showed they drew a bunch of cards. Interestingly, like, none of the top cards would have dealt with this. I just had an incredible hand, and it just made this match very easy for me. So, again, I think I'm like 7-0 at this point. So now playing against, shout out to OG123, AGA, or 113. This dude, and I know it's a dude, I played with him a lot over the years. They're on 90s MTG. Super chilled person, Ruby Storm expert. Like, they play a ton of Ruby Storm, but they also play like Death and Taxes type decks and stuff. So I'm not sure what they're on. But this seems like a pretty good hand. It doesn't have any combo pieces, but it does have force, and it has Nadu. So the ability to dig, this is the classic Island Ponder keep hand. So their hand, Elemental Eruption, if you're not familiar with this card, 6 mana, Storm, create a 4/4 red creature with flying and prowess. So this is basically GG if it resolves. And you can't even force it, so you have to anticipate it coming out. It's very powerful top end to Ruby Storm, and it's probably the main way that they'll win nowadays. Ruby Storm is not like a widely played deck, but it's a good deck. It's extremely difficult to play against because you don't really know what to counter. They have so many, 2-for-1 type effects that you will very quickly lose if you just blindly force stuff. You have to be really careful. Also, I love the Art on Ren's Resolve. So cool. All right, so here we go. I definitely... Wait, where did the... did I put it back? Put Cabal Therapy... Okay, so I did mulligan there to get this beautiful hand. Okay, so they're starting off with their typical, like, draw a bunch of cards. Now, this may look kind of mediocre, but this is their next land drop, and this is going to turn into a card that they can keep in their hand. So it's not bad at all. All right, so I surveil, and I keep my top card because it's a Cephalid Illusionist. It's better than my average draw. I mean, it is part of the combo, even though we have Nadu, and we can probably combo off that way, and that's definitely a safer way to combo. That is one thing I'll say about Nadu is it feels so much safer to play a Nadu because you're not committing your entire deck. If you try to go off with Cephalid Illusionist and they do have a Surgical or a Fairy Macabre or something, like that's game. You lost. You went from potentially winning the game to losing. They counter Nadu. They just counter Nadu. You know, the game goes on. But with Cephalid Illusionist, you really have to put everything on the line. Okay, so here's another flip. Again, just 2-for-1s. They're already up so many cards. So these are effectively cards in hand. They're going to have land drop number 4, and they're going to have a Rite of Flame to generate mana, to generate Storm for Elemental Eruption. And along the way, they can Seething Sog. This Urabrask is a sick card. It's got great art, too. And yeah, like, terrifying card. 4 mana. It's a lot of mana, but, you know, you can definitely generate it in this deck. So here, they go ahead and put even more stuff. Questing Druid, another card that gets 2 cards. Like, so many, I think they have like 12 effects in their deck, maybe 13 or 14, because they've got this new Outlaws of Thunder Junction card that has Retrace that effectively does what Ren's Resolve does. It costs 1 more mana, but you can retrace it and you can discard land, and you can get 2 cards every turn off of it, basically. Yeah, I mean they're really quickly ramping toward this Elemental Eruption. And these forces, like, keep in mind, like, if I had forced anything, it would be like a 1-for-2, and they would have just drawn a bunch more cards. So I'm kind of like holding these, hoping for a payoff that I can actually counter. Hoping to, okay, there's my card. I'm just playing it out because I know they don't really have a way to remove it, or I don't think they have a way to remove it, but they actually do have a way to remove it. Umbrask. I have to force this. You don't, if this resolves, it can, well, actually, it can't kill my creature. It's just, it does damage to target opponent, but it does generate mana, and it just, things get out of hand very quickly. This is a must force. And generally, forcing a 4-drop isn't bad because, I mean, you just, like, they spend 4 mana, you spend 0 mana, right? It's a pretty good trade, even if you're going down a card. So here they're generating, and now, sensing that they're Seething Song with 4 Storm, I'm like, if this is Elemental Eruption, the game's over. And I think I even say so. Maybe I don't say that. This comes up next game. Okay, so here I didn't draw anything. These are all dead cards. I am basically stuck. I've already used my Surveilling. There's no reason to crack this. I just have to sit and hope. And, you know, hope springs eternal. Here's Bergie. So I think I draw... Oh, Caracas is good. I can bounce Bergie and I can attack. In retrospect, what I should have done instead of attacking is I should have just... They are doing damage to themselves, but it's like one damage is so piddly. I should have just activated this and mold the top 3 cards, hoping to find like Narcomoeba or some action. Okay, so now they're playing out Questing Druid, or they're you know, flipping cards with Questing Druid. Now they've got Ruby Medallion, and now like this is definitely going to come down next turn. So I did hold back the damage here, and I went ahead and did that. So I ended the Ruby Medallion. I'm bouncing Bergie, just trying to keep their mana restricted. But they have so many lands that it's not really going to matter. Bergie has mana. Now this is the card that has Retrace, Embrace the Unknown, and I actually like forget. I miss a trigger on the Soul God Lantern that I play here, and I forgot to exile that Embrace the Unknown. If I had done that, then they wouldn't have been able to retrace, but instead they were able to retrace. I mean, I wasn't going to win anyway. Like, they just had this very commanding presence. So here you're about to see like just how powerful this card is. They had like 2 Storm, but wait, they're not going to cast Elemental Eruption yet? Oh yeah. So they're building up mana here. Yeah, every spell they cast with Bergie like generates red mana, and also yeah, so they Rite of Flame here. They get 5 mana Elemental Eruption, and yeah, look at that. 8 flying Prowess Dragons. The game's over. Even with Nadu, I bounce. Yeah, I would have needed 1 more mana. So actually, it's worth talking about this. So if I had 1 more mana, I would have been able. I tapped this mana, You can see I tapped it. So I drew this, and then I draw Nomads. So I could have played Nomad, and I could have played Illusionist and won. Alternatively, if they hadn't grape shotted my Cephalid Illusionist, I could have won there. So this was a close game. It may not look like it's that close when your opponent has 8 4/4 flying dragons, but like if they hadn't done that, like if Cephalid Illusionist was still in play and they hadn't grape shotted me, and they only did that to build Storm, this could have been won. All right, let's go to game 2. He and I both had to take a break and tend to like in-laws. Okay, so come over here. Yeah. Okay, so let's take a look at opening hands. They have a pretty ridiculous, like they've got Ruby Medallion into Umbresk. Or Urabrask. It's hard to say. Urabrask. Urabrask is going to run away with this game. You'll see. And they've also got Petal. Got so much action going here. My hand is very mediocre. I basically had to brainstorm this Thassa out of my hand, but I do have double force, so I think I keep this. I am on the play, thankfully. And I think I just go ahead and Island Ponder. So I don't get to see. So it looks Cephalid Illusionist, Urza Saga, Cephalid Illusionist. So I shuffle that. Did I shuffle that? I guess I take the Saga just because I'll get the Saga next turn. It feels like I should shuffle that. Okay. Lotus Petal comes out. Ruby Medallion, just like I said, they're going to go into Umbrask. Urabrask. Sorry, I keep mispronouncing that. Okay, so I'm brainstorming some cards back. And now I am going to... they're playing Defense Grid. I feel I have to counter Defense Grid. And now the Seething Song, and I'm sure that like they could have that card. So I feel like I have to force this. I said, if you have the Storm Spell... If they have the Storm Spell, I'm dead. But like in retrospect, they would have just probably resolved both Ren Run and Ren's Resolve and Urabrask. That would have been good either. So this Defense Grid is no problem. I can just remove it with Prismatic Ending once I draw a white. But as you can see, I'm like going nowhere fast here. And this Urabrask comes out, and it's just game breaking. I want to, like the game's over. I'm going to lose completely lose. My streak is dead. But I just want to show you how powerful this Urabrask is. So they're flipping cards, and each of these generates mana. It pings me for 1, and they can pay 1 red mana after they've cast 3 spells, and they can essentially like flip this over, and they get this thing called the Great Work, which is really cool. Like, look at that art; it's insane. But basically, it does 3 damage and immediately kills all my constructs. They're taking up to like, it's just like so oppressive. This game was not even close. They just had an incredible hand. I play out Thassa's Oracle just to have something on the board because I might as well, and I did Surveil kind of. But here they're just going to Shatter Skull smashing it. And they got Questing Druid ticking up. I've got Blue Elemental Blast to get rid of the Great Work, which as the third thing, it flips back over to Urabrask. This card just does not go away. It's so powerful. I mean, it's a 4-drop. To be playable in Legacy as a 4-drop, you have to be pretty damn good, right? The Elemental Eruption they have, and I actually am not that far from winning, and we have some polite banner at the end, which I'll spare you of. But basically, yeah, I think I had like a Prismatic Ending somewhere. I might have had 2 Prismatic Endings that I brainstormed onto the top. Anyway, that's the end of the streak. And now we go into this, and this is a matchup that I think I'm really well positioned against, but we'll see what happens. Okay, so... this player usually plays like tempo decks. They play a lot of Merfolk. They play Delver, and here I am with my very mediocre hand. I have no idea what they're on. This does have a Brainstorm. I think we put this back. The Narcomoeba is a dead card. Therapy is a dead card. Yeah, and we put it back, and we get a much better. And I think I put back Caracas here, but actually I should have put back Plains. There's no reason to expect them to have Blood Moon or something in the blind. Caracas does have a lot more flexibility if they have to be like a Dark Depths deck or something like that. Anyway, I do put back the Caracas here. And so we start by, since I've already got 2 ponders, I go ahead and surveil that to my graveyard. And here they are with a whole lot of action here. They've got Elvish Visionary. They've got Wirewood Symbiote. Like, this is a killer hand. Now, what they don't have is an initial green. Actually, they do. They're fetching. When I was just having to pause when they were fetching. So this is like the big misplay. So normally, I play against this deck a lot. A lot of people on Cockatrice play this deck. It's like a pet deck. There are a lot of hardcore people out there with the 4 foil guys, cradles. You know, the judge foils that are worth like $2,000. They just love having their foiled out Elves decks, and they don't want to accept that this deck is not very good right now because of Bowmasters. But I'm not playing Bowmasters, so this deck is pretty good actually. It's a very good deck against my deck. And it happens to have cards like Allosaurus Shepherd that basically blank my counter magic, and they arguably have like a better Goldfish than I do. So I should have played my planes and just plowed this, just in case they had Cradle. What do? I'm like, well, I'll just plow whatever they play next. And I know better. I'm really disappointed in myself that I didn't just take my medicine and plow that. Instead, I ponder, and let's see. I think I step away. This is the way the replays work here. Is kind of real time. It's like super sped up, like 10x. But okay. So now they play the Korean Rager, and I definitely could have plowed there too. But now they play the Gaia's Cradle, and there's nothing I can do to respond. They're going to get the extra mana because they would be getting 1 mana off of Gaia's Cradle instead of 2. So it's too late. They're going to get Elvish Visionary, which draws a card, and they've got lots of mana. I can still plow it, but you know they're going to be able to untap their land. And oops, I skipped ahead. Sorry. Okay, so yep. So I plow. Elvish Visionary comes into play. They have just an insane hand. Look at that, and it's all because of the extra mana they're going to be getting off Gaia's Cradle. Me, on the other hand, I've got like very little going on. So I probably would have lost either way. Now that I've got Nadu, I'm 1 turn away from going off with Nadu. But they're going to go off this turn. Glimpse, Visionary, Symbiote. And they actually have a pretty pathetic Glimpse there. They only drew like 4 cards, but they still got a stacked hand. Okay, and now this is another bad play, okay? This is where my inexperience with the deck is going to show. So what game 1 would they possibly have other than like endurance, right? They might have endurance. Endurance is not the end of the world, by the way, because what you can do is you can therapy, name endurance, force them to discard endurance, and then you can finish. But for some reason, I thought it's safer to go with Nadu, but it's actually safer to go with Cephalid here. So let's do Nadu, and I'm going to draw a bunch of cards. I'll just draw 6 cards real quick. No big deal. Just casual draw 6. Okay, and put a land into play. Unfortunately, I don't have another white source that I can fetch. And I can't Prismatic End to get rid of like the Wirewood Symbiote, which is what you always get rid of in these kinds of situations because you can bounce the Visionary and crazy stuff happens. You got to stop that. So I just have to pass the turn. And now I can do it again, of course. And I'm going to go ahead and do it again. I'm going to get a bunch of stuff in play. Another 6 cards. I've got a Force of Will. But, okay, and here I'm basically... I think it's correct to get rid of that for some reason. But that's not actually the threat. I shouldn't have gotten rid of that. So here they're green sun, and what they're doing is they're going to get the Allosaurus Shepherd, so I have to do it. So here I don't have any more blue mana. And I think for a minute, like, did they actually play that this turn? Did the Wirewood? But I think Wirewood came out last turn, so I was just kind of squandering time. But the important thing to note is, had I just played Cephalid Illusionist and Nomads, I could have won. Even with Endurance, I could have therapied, named Endurance. They have to play Endurance. No problem. They put my graveyard on the bottom of my deck, and I just go off again, you know? So, and I would have seen their hand and saw the coast was clear. I kind of leveled myself. I overthought. Yeah, I played myself, right? So, unfortunately, we lost this game, and it was due to 2 big punts on my part. This game, I just don't think we were in it. We're gonna see, but I just get completely destroyed. Okay, so my opponent. So I don't have anything going on. I've got Nadu in like 2 turns. My opponent has Glimpse. They have double Glimpse. They have Cradle. Yeah, I mean, basically they're doing the thing. This is when you're as an Elves player. This is what you hope to do, right? So they've got Wirewood, Symbiote, Elvish Visionary, which by itself is a card draw engine, a very strong one. Again, these are all X1s. These are all completely invalidated by the existence of Bowmaster, and nobody would take this deck to a serious tournament when like 50% of decks have Bowmasters in them. But I'm not playing Bowmasters here, and they got an extremely favorable matchup. So, kudos to them. I think they played really tight. I did not play tight that first game. The second game, they're able to clear the way with Thoughtseize, but it doesn't even really matter that they cleared the way because they're about to double Glimpse. Glimpse, and just watch. We'll just take a moment to appreciate how powerful this deck from, 10 years ago, 15 years ago has become. Yep. And look at their hand. Look at their hand. There's no way I'm winning with this, right? And this is after they took care of Nadu. Yeah. So, fortunately, we go to the last match, which, this is definitely like the softest of the matches. Like, this is not a real deck. It's like Monoblue Delver, 61 card special. Yeah, I mean, I'll play it real quick. I'm not going to comment too much because I think, frankly, they play very poorly. And no shade to them. They're probably getting better at the game. They were polite and everything. But, yeah, like, I just completely destroy them. Tarmander was never really like a playable legacy card, in my opinion. And they're going to get Standstill in play. But guess what I've got? I've got 2 freaking Urza Sagas. And eventually they have to break their own Urza Saga to be able to... so I do get a construct even though they waste there. And, yeah, I just do the construct thing. This is why nobody plays Standstill anymore. I mean, frankly, like, you can't play Standstill when everybody's got Urza Saga in their deck. And, like, you can play Urza Saga yourself, but you may not draw the Urza Saga. It may not line up well. They may be able to get some really devastating stuff down before you can get your Standstill down, and then you can't even cast the Standstill. This card, I hadn't even seen it before, Tolarian Terror. It's like a pauper card. It's not a legacy playable card. So, yeah, like, I just run them over with constructs, and then, they've got another Standstill in their hand that no sane person would cast. They've got a new card, Brain Surge, which it'll be interesting to see whether that's actually a legacy playable card. But this is Cockatrice. This is where people experiment and brew. And most of, like, every other deck, I think, aside from the deck that had that planar, card plus the Mishra's, or is it Urza's Tower? That was like a little bit of a brew on 12 post. But, yeah, every other deck I played against over this series of 10 matches over 2 days was serious. This is the least serious of them. But you can kind of see what, like, this deck can do. Because you are going to show up at, like, a big tournament, like, Eternal Weekend. And there are going to be people that just dust off their deck and their pet deck, like their, Elves deck or whatever, and show up at Eternal Weekend. You need to be ready to beat those decks as well. Fortunately, this deck can beat kind of like a whole bunch of, Insectile aberrations. And that's what we proceed to do here. I played Nadu. They force, I force back. They pierce. I've got another Nadu waiting in the wings. Waiting in the wings. The winged wisdom waiting in the wings. That was an unintentional pun. But, yeah, I'm just going to... There's no... Well, okay, actually, I'm playing... normally I complain that Surgical is not something you should board against my deck, but you should board it against Breakfast. You shouldn't use it on Urza Saga. I think that's a misplay. I don't know why they did that. But, yeah, like, they get to see my deck, and, okay, great. You saw my deck, but now Nadu's coming out, and I'm going to draw a bunch of cards, and you're going to die. And as soon as I play the Nadu, and I have the Shuko out, they know I'm going to start drawing cards, and they've got nothing going on. So, yeah, it's kind of like an anticlimactic end to the set. But what happened? We went, 64% game win, 80% match win. We get exactly 50% on die roll, which is what you'd expect. And I think I've got detailed notes. These are all public. You can read my detailed notes from all these games. I'm going to keep updating this. Again, I want to point out that I've got a detailed sideboard guide. I haven't actually played all these matches, so a lot of this is theory crafting. This is heavily based off Larson, L4S, L4R, S0N is his MTGO name, and he has won, I don't know, dozens and dozens of trophies playing Breakfast. He's been playing Breakfast basically exclusively for the past few years, at least the last year. I've got a lot of videos of me playing against him. Check out his videos. But I used his sideboard guide, and then I combine it with kind of like, my deck's a lot different from his. Like, he's playing Orm's Chant. He's playing, the old tech, which is Stoneforge Mystic and stuff like that. But yeah, you can kind of see how I approach different matches, and you can see like there are very few matches where I board in just a ton of cards. So, I never board out the combo, for example. The cards I would never board out here, you can see. I never board out any of the combo cards. They always stay in. There's one matchup where I board out Nadu, and that's Red-Black Painter, just because they've got like 5 or 6 Red Blasts, and I don't think you should count on winning with that. But every other matchup, I do keep him in. And then I do board out Force in tempo matchups. And I do board out Lantern quite a bit, but Lantern's really good main deck when you find yourself against like Reanimator or lands or something like that. And I occasionally board out land against this plays 20 land. It's a pretty reasonable mana base. Is reasonable as a mana base that is it 20? Oh, because I'm leaving out the Saga. Yeah, with the Saga it's 20. So 20 lands, just pretty conservative land base, considering that we're a 4-color deck. We're barely a 4-color deck. We only splash green for Carpet and for Nadu. There's no other green in our deck. We have one Veil, which, Veil is a card that I'm not like really high on. I think it kind of sucks. When it works, it feels great, but usually it doesn't work. Usually it just rots in your hand, or you get griefed and they see it and they're like, nice, Veil that you're not going to be able to cast. And they just play around it, right? But I do think it's good here because it can make your cards uncounterable, and it can blow people out. And the turn you go off, this Veil can be as good as a Teferi, basically. So I hope you've enjoyed this quick tour of Nadu Breakfast. Again, I'm going to add links to the sideboard guide, which includes the match history, my match record, and it also includes a detailed FAQ where I talk about different considerations like when should you side out Nadu? What is your nightmare matchup? Things like that are like just questions. If you have questions for me, just ask in the YouTube comments and I can potentially update this list. But my goal is to like just hit the leagues hard with Nadu as soon as this card's available and record a lot of those, and those will be coming up on my channel. So be sure to subscribe. Be sure to like this video. Be sure to tell your friends that Nadu is absolutely cracked and it is my candidate for the card that's going to be banned in Legacy. I do think it's ban worthy, like based on my gameplay, like 3 mana, like in this specific shell, it just seems so ridiculous. Now, I could be getting really high on my own supply. It's a new card. There's a lot of hype. Like people are excited. Like this is the only card in Modern Horizons that I think is even approaching ban level in Legacy. Now, Vexing Bauble I think could probably get banned in Vintage, for example. There are probably lots of cards that could be banned in Modern, but I've not seen any card that is anywhere near this powerful in Modern Horizons 3. This is the one. So, it's the one that like pulled me out of my control shell back into playing combo. And I love combo, blue-based combo. I love Alurin. I love Breakfast, even though it's got a bunch of janky cards. But like, if Nadu was not out, like, there's no way I'd be playing Breakfast right now. I think it's an underpowered deck because it's got so many X1s and Bowmasters there. But Nadu just completely flips the script. I mean, you saw there were like games where I draw literally 30 cards off Nadu. So, yeah, I'm very excited about this card. Pre-order it if you haven't. Get it on MTGO as soon as you can and playtest and let me know. We're all in the Breakfast Discord, and we'd be thrilled to talk with you and hear about your tournament reports if you go to like local tournaments and play this deck. I, of course, encourage you to try my specific build, but there are also builds out there that don't even play Urza Saga and instead play cards like Cavern of Souls, I don't think they're as good. I think Urza Saga is a really powerful card in Legacy. There are also, Yorion versions of the deck that can play Bowmasters of their own and other good cards that we just don't have space for because the breakfast package is quite dense. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, potentially 12 here. And then you've also got 13, 14. And then you've got 15, 16. Like basically 16 cards are like dead cards that really you don't want to draw. You technically want to draw your A and B, but a lot of these cards you just don't want to draw them. You want to have them in your graveyard when you go off. And that's their sole purpose, right? It's kind of a janky deck. I mean, it's a 25-year-old monstrosity, like terrible commons and uncommons that like nobody plays anywhere else. But they just happen to synergize. And Nadu is similarly a card that like if Nomad's Encore did not exist, this would be like a bulk rare. But because Nomad's Encore exists, this card is an insane engine. So yeah, still an AB combo, still fragile, still something that can take a plow, but I'm very excited about it. With that, until next time, be excellent to each other and party on, dudes.